Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast, where we identify God's uncommon work in common life. Recognizing God's work requires intentionality, but articulating it motivates and inspires. Don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Phil Anderson, who is the Executive Director of the Nazarene Compassionate Ministry Center in Cactus, Texas. He shares a little bit about his ministry journey and what God is doing in Cactus and how you can be a participant in what God is doing in this world. So let's get into the conversation with Phil. Phil, thank you for being a guest on our podcast today. We appreciate you taking time to be with us and share a little bit about the ministry that you are doing. But before we get into your current ministry in Cactus, I wonder if you could share a little bit about your earlier life, particularly you were a missionary, but before you were a missionary, you were not in vocational ministry, I guess you could say. Could you tell us what you were doing before then?
Before being a missionary, sure. Both my wife and I had careers with the government of Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania. She was a social work professor at Shippensburg University, which is a state university, and I was a supervisor with state parks, the conservation and natural resources. And so we attended our local Nazarene church. We were very involved as lay leaders in that church, but had just anticipated working for and retiring, with the state of Pennsylvania and just doing our thing. And so that's where we were and what we were doing.
Now, eventually you received a call that took you to the mission field. Could you share that call?
Yeah, what really took place was we still anticipated remaining doing our careers and being leaders in the church as lay leaders. Missions or ministry was really never anything that we were contemplating. But Denise needed to take a sabbatical, and she was wondering what she would do. Didn't want to just stay at home and write a book or do some journal or something like that, which often happens, but to do something significant. And so we began to search what that would look like. Tried every avenue through different things in the school, and it didn't work. So our pastor at one point then said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being Nazarenes in volunteer service?" So this was a while ago, and it was called NIVS. And we said, no. And he said, but you really ought to check it out. One thing led to another. And we reached out and we got invited to go to Thailand as Nazarenes in volunteer service, where they put us to work doing things that were not social work and not, at least for her, and then just whatever needed to be done for me. She ended up teaching English in public schools in Methang, Thailand. But she turned that around and showed how teaching English and social work and being involved with people in that regard is all kind of one thing. And she actually wrote an ESL book on how to teach Thais English as a social work professor. Long story short, we fell in love with Thailand. We fell in love with the idea of missions. And 4 months into our year there, we knew that we wanted to be full-time missionaries. Went to the field strategy coordinator at that time, Michael McCarty, and he said, yeah, the honeymoon phase is still in. Give it another month or two. When that crashes, and then you come back to me and tell me. Well, in a couple of months, he came back and said, you know what? I feel like you guys absolutely need to be missionaries, and the Lord is confirming that to me as well. And so the steps began while we were still in Thailand as volunteers to what were we going to do. We were almost thought about just paying the money back for the year that Denise was going to owe the university. Well, we probably shouldn't do that. So we went back home and took care of all the business, spent a year there. I actually went to school, got my bachelor's degree in that year, finished up, I should say. And from there took the steps to become missionaries with the Church of the Nazarene. So it was really because we wanted to do something different in a sabbatical for the state of Pennsylvania University that God ended up using that to call us into full-time ministry.
And where did you serve as missionaries after you went back into the field?
So our first assignment was in the Caribbean field, when it was just the Caribbean before they combined that with Mexico, Central America. And so we served in the Dominican Republic as regional missionaries for the Caribbean. And Denise went in as compassionate ministries, and I was communication coordinator. So there we had work that fit our degrees. So my degree was communications, and hers was social work. And so we began our mission adventure in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, which was, really a difficult place to have to start your mission career. But
someone's got to do it. So,
all right.
And so then you went to South Africa, correct?
Correct. After the Dominican Republic, well, during the time in the Dominican Republic, the church called literally, or you could say God called through the church, literally a telephone call, and asking us if we would consider and pray about moving to South Africa. They had a need for us there, and we learned later. Eugenio Duarte was the regional director at the time, and he said, I was just brand new as regional director, and I didn't know when we went to regional director interviews with potential missionaries that we were supposed to fight for those people who we, to fill needs. And so he said, when somebody said, "Hey, I'll take them," just let it go. But then the need came up greater, and he called and asked if there was anybody available and talked about us. And so we prayed as a family, because one of the things that we said before we ever went on the field, even as volunteers to Thailand, was with our two girls, Mackenzie and Morgan, that we don't do this because it's my call or Denise's call or even mom and dad's call, but the family's call to be missionaries. And so it takes all of us to feel confirmation from the Lord to do something. And so we all prayed about whether we should go to South Africa and serve on the Africa region. And a long story short, there were some things in there that were happening. My youngest said, "No way, I'm not going. I'm staying as a Dominican. My friends are here. I'm going to marry a Dominican. This is my home. That's it. We're not going anywhere." And we encouraged her to pray about it. And she eventually came to us and said, "Well, I told God we shouldn't go." He said, "Nope, you need to go. It's okay." And so, "It's okay, Mom and Dad, let's go to Africa." So after about, I guess it was 18, 19 months, something like that in the Caribbean, we packed everything up and we headed to South Africa. Yeah. There we stayed for 8 years. We were 4 years as missionaries under Eugenio Duarte and then Philemon Chambo. And then the Lord shifted things up again, and we ended up not renewing our global mission contract, but staying in South Africa, immigrating, and pastoring a local church there for 4 years.
Well, that's a cool story, particularly with your daughter praying and the whole family being involved in that. So that's awesome and inspiring. Now, after your 8 years in South Africa, you came back to the States and you helped plant a church. Can you tell us what that was like? And particularly with all of your experiences of how they kind of relate to each other.
They don't. Church planting is a completely different animal. It really is. I guess there's missions involved if you really want to stretch it a little bit. But yeah, so we came back. There's a long story and a history behind why we even came back to the U.S. at that point. But we felt that the Lord was leading us back. And Denise took a position as a social work professor with Olivet Nazarene University. So we moved to Kankakee, Illinois. There were no churches available. I worked with the district trying to find a pastorate or even some kind of ministry work, but it just didn't come up in the time we were there. And the district superintendent kept encouraging us to plant the church, plant the church, plant the church. And we thought, that's crazy. We're in Kankakee. If you draw a circle around, there's like 15 Nazarene churches, in 5 mile circle. And it just didn't feel like the right thing to do. But the Lord impressed on us to maybe do something different. And so we called our daughter's then boyfriend, who's now her husband, knowing that he had a call on his life to be a church planter, and said, "Hey, how would you like to move to Kankakee?" He was in Ottawa, Illinois, working as an associate pastor there, and plant a church. And he said, "Wow, I know I have a call in my life to do that, but I was thinking like when I'm in my 30s, not when I'm 24, 23. And so he prayed about it and really felt that the Lord said, yeah, do it. And so we began this whole planning of what this was going to look like, and partnered with my daughter and Mario Flores to plant this church, and Susan Murill, who's still a vital part of that congregation to this day. Susan actually served with us in Africa, came over as an intern, and was one of my worship leaders in the church there. And so we have a long history, and she came on board and was helping us with that. So we planted this church with some different ideas involved, but the Lord moved again within that setting and said, nope, this is where I want to go. And we were meeting in our living room, and when we reached 65 people, sitting in our living room, dining room, up on the counters in the kitchen, and all through the hallway, trying to hear what was going on and see, our little screen. We bought a whiteboard and would show, words on the screen and things like that. We knew it was time to move on and find a building and do what we needed to do. But it was a lot of work, and time consuming, day in and day out with the business plan that we had to have based on what we were trying to do with the church, which was we actually wanted to open a coffee shop that would host a church. So many times it's a church that says, hey, let's open a coffee shop. And they have the resources and the backing to do it because they have a congregation. We didn't have that. We wanted to start the congregation through meeting people in the coffee shop. The Lord had other ideas, and they kept saying, hey, if you guys plant a church, we'll come. People kept saying, you guys plant a church, we'll come. You guys plant a church, we'll come. So we thought, all right, we got to plant a church. So we did. The coffee shop still hasn't happened, but Community Cup, as it's called, is still known for its coffee. I used to spend 4 hours every Sunday afternoon before our Sunday evening service, was when they still meet Sunday evenings, and make pour over coffee for 30 people. So they upgraded a little bit and have a machine and stuff now, but it's nice. So that was the church plant, and it was similar to missions in the fact that we started from scratch and knew that there was a lot of people around there. We didn't want to have a church that just grabbed other Nazarenes from other churches. We weren't necessarily trying to pull university students out of Olivet, yet they came. And so it ended up that the church was and still is a very young church. I would say the average age is probably 26, something like that. And so when my wife and I visit, we raise the mean age to 28. And they're all having babies, so it's growing by having families occurring, and so it's really, really cool. So that was the church plant that we had there, but it was inspiring and it was difficult, and then we just really felt God saying, this part, I need Mario and Mackenzie, who are now married, to take over, and I have something else in store for you. And while we knew about Cactus Nazarene Ministry Center, because all of it was taking missionary trips down here, like your church did, and we knew people on that, including Susan Murill, who was our worship leader at Community Cup, and others, we knew about it. Never had we thought about ministering there, but then one day we were approached by the chair of the board, Dr. Larry Dunlap, and he talked to us, and one thing led to another, and we felt the Lord calling us to Cactus, Texas, to minister at the Compassionate Ministry Center.
Now, how long have you been at Cactus?
So we have been here a little over 3 years.
3 years here. So can you tell us a little bit about Cactus, what it does, and just the demographic of the ministry?
Sure. If I can, I'd like to I'll give you a little bit of a history of Cactus, of the town of itself, and how it came really to be what it is now and why the ministry is here. Because I think it helps lay a foundation for how important this ministry really is. So Cactus is a fairly old town. It's a very, very small agriculture community. Well, it's bigger now than it used to be. Many years ago, it was just kind of a wide spot in the road. Then Phillips Petroleum during World War II moved in here, and there was a fertilizer plant or a munitions plant, which turned into a fertilizer plant. And Cactus was the up and coming big town in the Northwest Panhandle. There were 6,000 workers at that fertilizer plant and their families. So it was really interesting. Cactus had high school and middle school and grade school. They had football teams, they had baseball teams, they had grocery stores, they had everything that you would want in a town. And it flourished and it grew. And then Phillips Petroleum pulled out, and it went from 14,000 or whatever people were here to 200, and right back to a nothing town. And so what happened then was there was a small meat packing plant here, and it got bought out and began to grow and develop, which brought in more people. Over the years, it kind of went from this sleepy little hamlet with a beef packing plant in it to something that people were afraid of, a town that was just had more bars and literally, I was told, brothels than anything else. And so it was a difficult place to live, and neighboring towns were a little bit afraid of it. But then as the meatpacking plant grew and began to bring in immigrants and refugees from around the world, the whole face of the town changed. And now it's about 3,100 people, with on average between 20 and 30 different ethnicities and cultures from around the world: North Africa, Southeast, Middle East here, China. And so it's just an amazing melting pot of people from around the world. And it's a quiet, safe little bedroom community. The challenge now of Cactus is you have all of these people who have come from so many different cultures trying to make their way in here. They get a job at JBS meatpacking plant, which pays them well, but they work long, hard hours. They have their kids in the school. They're having to traverse a new system of government, of how they get paid, of healthcare, or have healthcare, and they don't even know how to use it, and so many things. We hear stories all the time of people not knowing what their oven is for, and so putting wood in there and lighting on fire and using that to cook, or breaking holes in a concrete floor and making wood fires in their home, or tearing out the toilets because they're not used to European toilets. They're used to the squat pot of Southeast Asia or in other places in the country. Just so many things where they just don't know and don't understand. And so really before 2013 or so, well, actually what happened was in 2009, there was a tornado that devastated about a quarter of town. And some Nazarene pastors in Amarillo, which is an hour away, heard about that, came up to see what they could do, and started bringing clothes and food, and one thing led to another, and they realized that it was more need than that. And then the district superintendent heard about what they were doing in Cactus. He came to Cactus and just really saw the need for a compassionate ministry center that developed into something that would meet the needs of the community, and from there began to raise funds and build a building and hire people to see if we could get things moving to meet the needs. And so over the years, there have been different community assessments that have been done, and trying to figure out just what is the most important thing that people need in the community. When we got here, we began to do a new community assessment because it's a bit of a transit community, needs change. Different populations come in, more dense with North Africans some years, more Southeast Asians some years, whatever. And so their needs are different. But we've come down to really some of the major basic needs that everyone in the community, I shouldn't say everyone, a large percentage of the population need or could use or might be beneficial to them. And so those are the things that we focus on in the ministry center here. And that is ESL, which we don't call ESL anymore because so many people actually, English is not their second language. ESL means English as a second language. So we call it English as an additional language. Many of them, English is their third, fourth, maybe sixth language that they learn. But it's vital. While we live in the Panhandle, and Spanish is probably the major language spoken outside of English, there's a lot of people who don't speak Spanish, and so English helps them to be able to move into different positions in their workplace, even to move on from Cactus, or even to finish their schooling. They can go to college, get an associate's degree or beyond, whatever it might take. And so we have found that English as an additional language is vital, vital, vital. Not to mention, if they are working on their green card or citizenship, they 99% of the time have to take their citizenship interviews and tests in the English language. And so they have to learn English in order to do that. And so we found that helps them. The second major ministry that we focus on then is regards to that is immigration. There are so many folks who come, they get their green card, or they're refugees, or they're asylees, or they have to get a green card, or they need some sort of visa update, or they are wanting to get citizenship, or whatever it is. So we are now recognized by the Department of Justice. We have 2 accredited representatives with the Department of Justice, that being Denise, my wife, and Scarlene de la Cruz. And there are others now who have gone through the coursework or studying, and we will send in their applications too to also be accredited. So we have a number of people working in immigration. We hired a gentleman from Northern Iraq last year named Salah, and he has been so beneficial in that ministry, as he has 30 years of immigration experience and can also speak the languages of many of our Arabic speaking friends. And so it's been really great to have him working with us in immigration as well, to be able to take care of some of those language barriers in that regard. So we've got a large, wide area of languages covered with immigration. It's amazing to walk alongside of people who come in for the first time, do a consultation, fill out an application, go through everything that they have to go through, have found ways to come up with the money for the cost of the government, the application costs. We charge very minimally for them to come in to see us. And then we get to, many of them, sit down one-on-one and do mock interviews with them so that they learn exactly what they have to life to just the ministry here. We also then work on, we have a ministry to children. So we have a grade school here in Cactus. Everybody else gets bused to Dumas, which is about 15 miles from here. But the grade school has opened their doors, and we've had our after school program called Blast for a number of years. We've developed it and grown it and tried to curriculamize it over the years, and have made it, I guess, bigger, stronger, faster, better. And it's really cool to work with these kids, because they are immigrant and refugee children. And I think sometimes we forget about the issues that the kids might have and the struggles that they have because their parents are struggling. Many of them come not knowing how to speak English. They definitely often don't know how to write or read English, and yet they're coming to a school that teaches everything in English. And so part of the after school program is then to do English as additional language help with the little ones who are struggling, to help them with their reading, to keep their literacy going, to develop them in their education, but also to teach them about the Lord. We have carte blanche opportunity right there in the elementary school to teach them about Jesus, to sing songs, to teach them games, to work with them, to counsel them, and just really to love them and to let them know that they are thought of, that they are cared for, that they are loved, not just by us, but also by God. And so it's fun to watch them as they progress from pre-kindergarten all the way through 7th grade. And so working with the children has been a huge need for us, and continues to be in the community. They are getting a new school, and it's south of town, and so it's going to be interesting to see how things go there. We can't just walk over and do our thing anymore, but we're excited about that. Along with those three major things, we have the medical clinic that is inside of our building, and we work hand in hand with them. We do social work evaluations on all new patients. And then we work with them for resourcing whatever they need beyond the medical health care that they need. They also may have other needs that we can work with them. And while we might not be able to meet all those needs as a compassionate ministry, as a community development organization, there are other organizations around us that can. And so we have CareNet, which is a pregnancy resource center that is in Cactus and Dumas. And so we work hand in hand with them. We work with other lawyers who can help us out if we have cases like that. We have people that are are able to help us with immigration stuff that goes beyond what we're able to do. We work with Catholic Charities. We work with organizations clear down in Amarillo, which is an hour south of us. It's really neat to be able to just sit down and talk with people in that regard and say, hey, what do you need? What's going on in your life? And they come from all walks of faith. And so we have recognized that the community has recognized that while we are very much a Christian organization, we're not here to cram Jesus down their throat as much as to meet their needs, but Jesus just comes along with that, right? Yeah. That's who we are. And so it's a real blessing to offer prayer, to offer counseling, to offer tears, to just sit with people, to get to know people, to build relationships, and to help them wherever we can help them. To help them to learn to help themselves is one of our biggest things, to empower, to equip, to educate, and to evangelize. You could take the 4 E words and put us into this holistic ministry of body, mind, and soul, and family, and care, and workforce enhancement, and every aspect that we can try to help people with. And that's what Cactus Nazarene Ministries is doing in a nutshell. Whole lot of little things inside of that. Car seat giveaways, coat giveaways. Your team came down and helped us with our Bundle Up Cactus, which has been going on for years. And I think they gave around 410 coats away. And we know that we ran out of men's sizes. And so we're gathering some of those up to be able to go back to some of these families and get them some coats. And so, just ministries like that in between all of the major things that we do, helping people in the community paint their house or build a ramp or fix a window or whatever we can do. And so that brings on kind of one of the last things that we do, and that is invite ministry teams, or work and witness, as the Nazarene family would know it as. Bring ministry teams down to minister for their 7 days or 14 days or 10 days, whatever they spend here, to work with the kids, to help us with a certain project, to help us maintain our facilities here, and to work in the community and to get to know people. And so our college teams do a lot of service learning. We sometimes just send them out, tell them to go to Safari Restaurant and sit down and just listen and talk with the Somali and Sudanese men that hang out over there, or go to the police station, the fire station, or just talk to people on the street. And so oftentimes they come and they just learn differences in cultures and have a different understanding of people and what they're going through as they come from their country into this country and have to learn everything all over again. Yeah. So it's just really cool to be able to do that. That's us in a nutshell.
Yeah. One of the things that you mentioned that I don't want to overlook, or one of the concepts you're talking about, is you're helping people enter this country and understanding this country. So much of the immigration topic is seen through the political lens that we can forget that these are real people, that regardless of who they are, and by ministering to them as people, we see them as they are. By that I mean they're creating the image of God, and they have value and they have worth. And so I think it's important for us to make sure we take a step back from the noise that happens in our world, to make sure we recognize, regardless of our context, we deal with people, and those
Right.
people matter. Whether it's your neighbor that annoys you, or your coworker, or immigration, as we're talking about, whatever it is, Jesus calls us to minister to people. And when we break it down to the individual and personal level, we can have more empathy and just more care for whoever we encounter. So thank you for bringing that. And I just want to make sure we don't miss that opportunity to share that a little bit.
Absolutely. You know, the scriptures over and over again in the Old Testament tell the Israelites to take care of the foreigner among them, and actually to make them one of them, right? It never says, as God's people separated from everyone else, that you're separated and you never invite anyone in and you never take care of them because they're foreigners. It actually is the opposite. God tells them over and over and over again to take care of the foreigner. And then Jesus reiterates that in his own way in a new era that says, but you're to love everybody. If you love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor is yourself, then of course you're taking care of the foreigner among you. We all know our system is broken. We all know our immigration system is broken. It's needed an overhaul for many, many, many years. But that is not the immigrant or the refugee or the asylee's fault. It's not their fault. If we went where they lived and went through what they go through where they lived, I think we'd have a much better understanding of what these people are experiencing and why they flee. They don't want to, they have to. And why not come to a place that says you can be free here and you can work hard and do the things that you need to do and you can be who you need to be. And what a better opportunity to spread the gospel around the world, right, as the church, than when the world comes to us. It's cheaper. We don't have to go because they're coming to us. It's easier because now they're our neighbor, and Jesus tells us to love them. And so you hit the nail on the head. What a better way for the church to get involved with doing exactly what we're called to do than to help our neighbor in that regard. Regardless of a system that's broken, they need us and they need the Lord. And what better way to build a relationship and then offer them Jesus on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your ministry there. Now, in the show notes, I'll link to your website and any social media that you have. But are there any tangible ways that you can encourage people if they want to get involved or help the ministry in Cactus?
Absolutely. First and foremost, we ask for your prayers. We have this saying, it's pray for Cactus, give to Cactus, come to Cactus. And that says it all right there. So first off, we need your prayer. One of the things about being in a community like this with so many different cultures and so many religious backgrounds is that we are in the middle of spiritual warfare all the time. We know that Satan doesn't want this ministry here. And by human standards, many, many times, this ministry should not have been here. Financially, employee-wise, just lots of things that have happened over the past that in reality, it shouldn't have been here. But by the grace of God, it continues to be here, and he is blessing it, and it's growing, and it is meeting the needs of a community, and lives are being transformed. There are people giving their hearts to Jesus. And so right there, we know God wants this ministry. It needs to be here, but we need prayers of the people of God all the time, just covering us with that prayer. The second thing is, of course, any ministry like this, when you're trying to work in community development or compassionate ministries, is the resources. Cactus is unique in one way. We don't have a closed closet or a food pantry. It is a bit of a food desert, but it's available. We can get it. And it's not so hard that we have people that need food on occasion, and we help with that. And there's food pantries in Dumas, and so we can work together to make that happen. But we need the resources to continue the ministry that we're doing. Immigration, to do it for pennies, it ends up costing on occasion, or continue to buy snacks and do things for the kids at blast. just continuing the ministry costs. And so we have 6,000 or 9,000 square foot building that we have to maintain. I have 9 HVAC systems, things like that. So it is costly to do that. And we're in a very secluded rural area, so there's not a whole lot here for people to do. And so they don't come and say, hey, I'll volunteer for 5 years and live in Cactus. So we have to pay salaries with people. And so our monthly needs are fairly significant. And so giving to Cactus on a monthly basis right now would be a blessing. We really need monthly donors, whether it's $10 a month or $1,000 a month, whatever someone's, what God lays on their heart, we can use that. And then, of course, come to Cactus. We love teams. We love to put you to work, but we also love to see the lives of those teams that come to minister being touched and changed, and their eyes open to the fact that this is happening on U.S. soil, that this kind of place isn't just Cactus, but it is happening all around the U.S. And there are people who need the church to stand up and stand beside them and to work with them in meeting their needs and helping them to develop their ability to live in this society strongly and well and become the neighbor that we would hope for them to be and that they want to be. And so we love to host teams as well. And so those are the 3 major areas. Pray for Cactus, give to Cactus, come to Cactus. And there's always other things, but that covers it all.
Well, that's great. And as I said, I'll link to your website and any social media that you have in the show notes. So if people want to connect with you or find further information, they can do that pretty easily. I like to end with a very open-ended question in case we missed anything. Is there anything else you would like to share today?
Oh man, it's hard because there's a lot that goes on, and we could share about a lot of things. We cannot do this without our partners. We cannot do this without the Nazarene denomination, but not even just the Nazarenes. We need the people of God to help us work this, because while we have Nazarene in our name, we really are way beyond just being part of the Church of the Nazarene. We're part of this community, which makes us part of the world and part of the Texas Panhandle. And so we just really need people to step up. And in fact, the last thing I'll say as far as giving towards us, the 21st of November through the 29th, we have what's called the Panhandle Gives. And it is one of our best fundraisers. We utilize an online platform that all of the nonprofits in the Northwest Panhandle, from Lubbock all the way up here to us in we're almost not in Texas, so it's a long way. Utilize this to raise funds for year end on Giving Tuesday. And so look for the Panhandle Gives. Jeff, I'll send you links and stuff for that. And that's a great way to give to us. There are ways that we actually can get more for your dollar through this campaign. And it's kind of fun. It's easy. It's online. They send the letters. We don't even have to do the tax stuff. It's all taken care of. It's a great, simple way to give to Cactus Nazarene Ministries. And all of our information will be on that, and the links to our website and videos to watch and stories to be heard. And you can give through your favorite staff member if you want to, and then they get credit for raising funds. And so a lot of fun to do. And so that's a great way to end with that. So.
Yeah. Send me those links. I'll be happy to share them with this and promote them other ways as well. Well, Phil, I just want to say thank you for your time today and sharing kind of your journey and how God has used you. I find it inspiring, and I know others will as well. And thank you for your ministry at Cactus. It shows a real need, and as you said, it's on U.S. soil. It's not some other place. It's here at home. And there are tangible ways that people can get involved here and now, whether we're talking about Cactus, whether they're talking about their next door neighbor. But it's important that we make sure we recognize we do things here at home. So,
right.
Phil,
well, thanks for the invitation.
Yep. Thank you, Phil. Thanks for being on this. I appreciate you and your time. So thank you, Phil.
God bless. God bless.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Be on the lookout for how God does uncommon work in common life. and please subscribe to never miss an episode.